Hey guys, Dr. John here at Chiropod Health and Wellness, and we're talking about hip flexors today. We get a ton of patients asking about hip flexors or why they're getting low back pain, and a lot of it comes from your hip flexors. It's not always the case, but a lot of it does. So your hip flexors are right here. There's 5 major hip flexors, and basically there's hip flexors that are doing this, and there's hip flexors that are doing this and this. And because we do this all day long and we drive, gas pedal brake on the right, not on the left, so we're constantly shifting our pelvis, our hip flexors tend to get tight. So 3 awesome stretches that are intended to loosen up your hip flexors. One is specifically for the hip flexors, but the other ones are kind of these associated muscles that get tight with the hip flexors, because you have to realize when your hip flexors get tight, the opposite side, the big muscles, your glute maximus muscles, they're not activating as much as they should. So then these deep muscles start activating, and those deep muscles have things like the sciatic nerve running underneath them. You don't want those muscles to be constantly activated and tight, because you'll start to irritate your sciatic nerve and get something called piriformis syndrome, which causes numbness down the leg, which can also come from higher up in the back if the sciatic nerve is getting compressed higher up. And so we want to loosen those muscles, loosen some of these inside muscles, and loosen the hip flexors. So 3 awesome exercises. The first one is the pigeon pose. Now the pigeon pose, you want to do this on an elevated surface like a bed or a bench like I have here. And then the idea here, you just need to get your leg completely perpendicular like this. And then you're sitting down in this stretch. And you're stretching these deep muscles right in here. Glute medius, piriformis. And so the further back you sit your leg, the more of a stretch. Now if I was on the floor, that's how far I can stretch. That's it. I'm stuck. Now because I'm in an elevated surface, check that out. We can get way into a stretch here. Now be careful, kind of ease your way into that stretch. You don't want to bother your knee or your hip. So just kind of get your leg up like this. See how flexible, keep your foot close, and just slowly kind of start to stretch into that. So that's number 1, it's called the pigeon pose. Make sure it's perpendicular. Number 2 is the butterfly. So because I have dress pants on, this isn't gonna go fantastic, but you're basically getting your feet together, heels close to your butt, and you're gonna push your knees down, and you're stretching kind of the inside pelvic floor muscles, some of those deep hip flexors inside of there. So pigeon, butterfly, and then the last one is just this. Now a lot of people do this, and they're doing kind of this runner's lunging stretch. We don't want to do that. We want to sit back like this, straight up. So if I'm stretching this hip flexor, I'm going to sit straight up, I'm going to squeeze my butt, which then pulls my pelvis down and puts a stretch on here. Once I do that, I keep my butt squeezed, put my hands here, and push back. And I guarantee you're going to feel a much, much bigger stretch in your hip flexor when you do it that way versus this way. So again, now if I want to stretch the opposite side, you're going to get right here, squeeze your butt first, get tension here, then put your hands here and push back, and you'll stretch this major hip flexor. So pigeon, butterfly, and this stretch, those 3 stretches are really good for your hip flexors. You should do them on a continuous basis at least a couple times a day.